Hello and welcome to the AG Politics Podcast, the show that discusses African political affairs with the extra twist of covering not only African political issues but also geopolitical affairs with a clear, progressive lens. I am your host, Geographical Queen. In today's episode, I will discuss the self-defeating ideology of Africans not being capable of governing themselves. I will be deliberating about the brainwashing and mental blows defeating some African minds. Some Africans, especially the Western educated ones, have been abridged to believe that they are not capable of thinking, they are lazy, corrupt, stupid, and all the invectives you can get from the book. But is that the reality? Some Africans who migrated to the West have been so brutalized in their brains that the verbal insults they receive from their Caucasian lords has not only destroyed their self-confidence and effective thinking processes, but has impartially compelled them to accept and believe that fate that they are indeed inept. And so have they become too. Up until the 24th of February 2022, we lived in a unipolar world where African countries were handed a rope to tie around their necks by one nation known as the United States of America. The international laws established by the United Nations is ignored, and we are all forced to accept the American foreign policy as international law. And how did we get to this? Let me use Ghana as an example as to how such forced policies worked out to the benefit of only one country, known as the United States of America. When the current government under the National Patriotic Party came to power in 2017, Ghana was then a suicide kid at the IMF. Note that IMF loans are meant to sustain a country's debts and not to develop the country. Slowly and painfully, Ghana settled this debt and got out of the IMF grips. Fast forward to the COVID year in 2020, Ghana was touted as the success story of West Africa. Then the president of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, committed the crime and the awful sin of thinking about how to get out of the IMF grips entirely. He came up with a program known as Ghana Beyond Aid, a trading program that will enable the nation to be prosperous enough to be beyond needing aid from any Western country, but rather engaging competitively with the rest of the world through trade and investments. As if that was not enough, the president even had the guts to inform Switzerland that Ghana would no longer be selling raw cocoa to their famous avaricious corporate company known as Nestle again. And what happened next? Ghanaians slept and woke up some weeks later, and some entitled, ridiculous institutions calling themselves Standard & Poor and Moody's had run an op-ed claiming that Ghana's financial credibility level had been reduced to a C- or whichever of those ludicrous grades they decide to rate other countries with. The reason for this credit downgrading was, however, not given. But overnight, Ghana was declared bankrupt, and swiftly came the bloodthirsty IMF, waving the lone flag again. Like in some musical chairs, these bloody, thirsty, devious institutions managed to bully the country back to 2017 debt levels. And you'll think that the so-called educated Ghanaians, who have all the sense of the world in their brainwashed skulls, will put on their thinking caps to realize that the country Ghana has been taken for a ride. They are rather the ones pouring more gasoline into the fire by siding with such institutions. They accept the allegations that if the African politicians are not injudicious and corrupt, then it is because Africans are born incapable. Inferiority complex, unfortunately, seems to be ingrained in the DNA of such kinds. They are the first to inquire if the N-word man can think at all, when in reality, they are the ones who can think further than their noses, despite all their Western education. Yes, I agree, and it is a fact that a nation must have its own self-determination and independence to be developed. A nation that is controlled by other nations cannot progress. We saw this before. In the 1940s, when Japan, for instance, had the same external controlling problems, a situation that led Japan to go to war with the then Soviet Union in the 1940s. How can any bullied country, which has no choice but to live under a unipolar world, do otherwise? And we, as Africans, believe that Africans are not capable. Isn't it a blessing that the world is witnessing the creation of a multipolar world right in front of our eyes. So, what do you think? Are Africans really incapable of running their countries? Well, leave your comments in the comment section below, and thanks for tuning in. I will be back with the next broadcast. Good day.